Okay, so the first region that we're going to talk about is the East. And as you may or may not know, there's four different corners of the bracket, and 16 teams play in each corner. So there's 64 total teams after the round of 68, like we talked about in the last video. And they play all the teams from the East. All the teams in the East play each other. And then once the best team in the East is crowned, they play the best team in the West. And then the best team in the Midwest plays the best team in the South. And then the best team from that conjoined game play each other in the finals. So the first corner is the East. And the first game in the East is Duke versus Siena. That's the 1 seed versus the 16 seed. So remember, in every corner, there's a 1 seed through 16 seed. So there's 4 16 seeds, 4 15, 4 14, 4 1s. You get the idea. So the 1 seed in the East is Duke. Duke is considered to be the best team in the entire country. Their net ranking is 1 out of 365. They're on an 11-game win streak. They won the ACC tournament, which is a very big conference with a lot of really good teams. They've got a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. And if there's 365 teams, you can imagine how hard that is to do. They've got Cameron Boozer, the freshman, who's the National Player of the Year. And they are 12 wins and 2 losses against top 25 opponents. So the resume at Duke is pretty impressive. They score well. They hit well from the three-point line. They hit well from the free throw line. Their defense is great. There's a lot going for them. And they face off against Siena. So Siena's on a 4-game win streak. Before that win streak, they were kind of winning some, losing some. So nothing too impressive. They won their tournament, but it was a weak conference. So congratulations. You did great. You've done what every school looks out to do. But the real games are coming in now. So prepare yourselves. Their net ranking is 183 out of 365. So kind of in the middle, kind of around where UMBC was. They're undefeated at neutral locations, which is something that most schools do not have, which means that whenever Siena plays another school at a arena that neither of them play at, they win. And, they haven't played Duke yet, so take that with a grain of salt, but it's something. They're 2-7 against top 100 opponents. So they've played 9 different opponents within the top 100. They only beat 2 of them. So compare that to the 12-2 against top 25 opponents. There's kind of a disparity. Their 3-point threat is probably one of their weaker assets. It's moderate. It's okay. Okay is not good enough to beat Duke. So if you see this being one of the big upsets, a Cinderella story, I'm all for it. But keep in mind, there's only ever been 2 16 seeds to beat a 1 seed. And one of those times, the star player of the 1 seed was out. So there's only really been one actual time where a full 16 seed has beaten a full 1 seed. So if you think it's going to happen again, go for it, but not me. Oops, let me go back here. I skipped a few. Second game is the 8 seed Ohio State versus the 9 seed TCU. Now, this is one of the highest anticipated matchups of the entire tournament. Both of these teams looked incredibly strong before their conference tournaments and before March Madness. Ohio State lost in the Big Ten tournament by 4 points to the second best team in the country. They're the 29th best team according to the net ranking. Their momentum is quite strong, quite good. They have really picked it up the past couple months. That's the only reason they're in March Madness now. They've got terrific shooting. Their leader on their team has 20 points per game, which is a pretty impressive feat, especially if you're in the Big Ten, where a lot of the best teams in all of college basketball are. They've got really great defense. So that's something to note. The only thing is that they're 4-11 against top opponents. And we do consider TCU a top opponent. So they've only beaten 4 out of the 15 top opponents they've played. However, since February started, they've beaten 2 out of 3 of the top opponents they played. So keep that in mind. TCU is the 9 seed. They had a 6-game win streak before the tournament. They lost in the tournament by 5 points to the 21st best team in the country. So kind of a similar resume to Ohio State's in their conference tournament. They're ranked 39th out of 365. Their momentum is also pretty good. They have been hot, very hot. So this is a heavily contested matchup here. Their defense is absolutely fantastic. They've got 5 players with 1 steal per game, which is kind of absurd. They're 3-6 versus top 25 opponents. Top 25 opponents. Keep that in mind. Top opponents just means, good opponents. So Ohio State's 4-11 versus top opponents, pretty good opponents. TCU has 3 wins out of their 9 games against top 25 opponents. That's impressive. And just a side note before we move on here, 9 seeds historically are 18-10 versus 8 seeds since 1985. So if you're rooting for a 9 seed, you'll probably be on the right track. But keep all these things in mind and do your own research maybe if you're that passionate about it. Third game out of the East, 5-seeded St. John's versus 12-seeded Northern Iowa. So St. John's has looked fantastic. They're by far the best 5 seed in the tournament. They're on a 6-game win streak, including the tournament. They won the Big East, which is one of the strongest conferences in all of basketball. They blew out UConn. And if you know anything about college basketball, you know UConn is always a tough opponent. They blew them out. They beat them by 20 points. They're ranked 15th in the country. And since January 3rd, they are 20-1 with 1 loss to UConn, which was kind of an embarrassing loss. But they got them back because in the Big East Conference tournament, they kicked ass. They've got the Big East Player of the Year, who's averaging 16 points per game. Their head coach, Rick Pitino, is incredible, and their defense is equally as incredible. However, the one thing that can be noted about St. John's is that they are very vulnerable to cold runs, meaning if they slow down, they might keep slowing down. And against this Northern Iowa team, that's the last thing you want, who's on a 5-game win streak, although before that, they're pretty unpredictable. Win some, lose some. They won their conference tournament, but they never played the best team in that conference tournament because someone took care of them for them. They're ranked 72nd out of 365, so not that bad. They've got amazing defense. They have among the best 3-point defense in the entire country. Northern Iowa, who would have guessed? They have low possession games and they play pretty slowly, meaning neither team is super fast because Northern Iowa sets the pace in a lot of their games, which is something to note. They are 0-2 against top opponents. So they've played 2 opponents that were pretty solid, didn't beat either of them. And they don't really score much. They score about 70 points per game. And if you've noted how hot St. John's has been, that's not going to cut it at all. But there's, it's good to take these things into account because this is totally a game that Northern Iowa could win. It's just going to be difficult. The next matchup, one of the ones that I'm very excited about, Kansas versus California Baptist. So Kansas has been a really solid team this entire year, but they were a little bit slower coming into March Madness. They still were winning games, but they also started losing a few more. They lost their tournament semifinals in the Big 12. They were blown out by Houston. Houston's the 5th, I think, best team in the entire country. So take that with a grain of salt. They're ranked 21st in the entire country. They beat the 3rd best team in the nation, Arizona. So keep that in mind. Darren Peterson is considered one of the best players in the entire country. He averages 19.8 points per game in the Big 12, which is one of the stronger conferences, so that's really difficult to do. They've got fantastic defense, although they really struggle against fantastic defenses. So keep that in mind. The rebounding and turnovers are kind of weak. They're not fantastic at it. They don't rebound well, and they don't force turnovers. Although, to go along with that, they are pretty inconsistent with their field goal percentage, meaning just shots in general, but their free throw percentage is incredible. So if they get fouled a lot, they're going to win this game. No doubt about it. California Baptist is a unique team. Nobody really expected them to make it here. They're on a 6-game winning streak. They snuck by in the tournament. In each game that they played, including against the 1-seeded Utah Valley in their conference, they kind of snuck by like no more than 5 points in each game. It was a nail biter, but they're here. They're 98th in the country. They've got a guy named Dominique Daniels who is absolutely killing it. He's got 23.2 points per game, and he had 41 points in the semifinals of their conference. Name one other person who's done that. Maybe that was an unfair question. But they've won 15 out of their 17 last games, including tournament games. So they're 15-2 coming down the stretch. They're top 35 nationally in arc defense and outside the arc defense. So definitely keep that in mind. That's a very important stat if you want to win. They are also 0-1 versus the top 25 opponents, but these schools usually don't play many top 25 opponents, so don't use that to determine whether they're going to lose or win this game. But it's important to know. Next up, we have the 6 seed Louisville versus 11 seeded South Florida. This is one that a lot of people are thinking is going to be an upset, but I'll leave that up to you guys. Louisville plays really well, but can also struggle a lot against top opponents. So if South Florida plays like a top opponent, we could see an upset here. Louisville lost their tournament to Miami by 6. Miami's also in March Madness. They're a 10 seed, so they're also very good. Louisville's considered the 16th best team in the country. Here's where it gets rough for Louisville. Mikael Brown is their star player, and he will most likely not be playing in this game. They have the 4th highest shot percentage in the country and the top 20 in how many of their shots have been blocked, which is bad, just in case you were wondering. They're a great team. I'm not going to take that away from them, but they are inconsistent, especially mostly without Mikael Brown, which they probably won't have. Got 84 points per game, allow 72 points a game, and they're 3-6 against top 25 opponents, which is pretty solid. I mean, that's better than South Florida. They played one game in the top 25 and they lost it, but they are on an 11-game winning streak. They dominated their tournament, and they haven't lost a game since January. You should keep that in mind for sure. They're 45th in the country, and when they played Alabama, who's the 18th best team in the country, that was their top 25 game, they lost by 11, which is not that bad. That's a difference of like 4 possessions. It's not bad, especially for a team that's not considered major, like Alabama is. They're top 60 in both offense and defense, and that's important. It doesn't sound like much, but in a league where there's 365 teams, it is. All 5 of their starters average 11 or more points per game, and they have 2 players with 100 3-pointers this season. Who does that? That's really impressive. They have 88 points per game, so they score more, but their opponents score 4 more points on average than Louisville. So definitely going to be a great matchup here. If Louisville struggles without Mikael Brown, it's going to be rough. But I'll leave that up to you. So, third to last game in the East here, we've got 3-seeded Michigan State versus 14-seeded North Dakota State. Michigan State went 5-1 to finish the regular season, which is really impressive if you consider what conference they're in. They're in the Big Ten. They lost in the first round of the conference tournament to UCLA, who, to be fair to Michigan State, was incredibly hot to close out the year, also in March Madness. And they only lost by 4. They're very balanced on the inside and outside. So on offense and defense, inside the paint, outside the paint, very balanced. One of the most balanced teams in the country. They're 11th ranked via the net rankings in the entire nation. Jeremy Fears Jr. specifically, but the rest of the team are great at passing. One of the best passing attacks in the entire country. Although it should be noted that turnovers and rebounds are not a strong suit of Michigan State. They're a problem. They turn it over a lot and they don't get rebounds. They're very prone to comebacks, meaning they are losing a lot at halftime, but then end up winning the game. So if you pick North Dakota State and then you see them winning by 6 at the half and you're thinking, oh my God, they're going to do it. Don't count on it. They're a very disciplined team, though. So one of the more disciplined teams I've watched this year. But North Dakota State is on a 4-game winning streak. They swept their tournament, played great. They were the 1 seed. They were expected to win their tournament. They won their tournament. They delivered. They're the 114th best team, though. That's a difference of 100 teams between these two. They're really good at rebounding, and they're really good at preventing rebounds. They draw and commit fouls at very low rates, meaning they don't foul other teams very much, but they also don't get fouled. So they don't benefit from fouling, but they don't allow their opponents to benefit from fouling. So if they were playing a team like Kansas, that would be room for a Cinderella type upset because Kansas is big on their free throws, which you can only get if you get fouled, and North Dakota State doesn't foul. They score 80 points per game, which is pretty good, but they haven't played a top 25 opponent. And they only played one team in the top 100 all season, and they lost. So North Dakota State has not seen a team like Michigan State once this entire year. Moving on to the next game, you got UCLA versus University of Central Florida. UCLA is the 7 seed. UCF is the 10. So UCLA was very hot to end the season. They were 6-1 to end the year. They beat Illinois, who is a 2 or a 3 seed in this tournament. They lost in their conference tournament to Purdue by 7. Purdue would go on to win their conference tournament. I had to think for a second. They would go on to win the Big Ten, which is a very hard thing to do. They're 31st out of 365 teams. They've had some really impressive wins since January. They knocked off some top opponents, some top Big Ten opponents, some non-Big Ten opponents, some teams that weren't ranked but were close. Knocked them all off, except for one. Their offense is good. Their defense, however, is in the top 60. That should be noted as their strong suit because their top 2 scorers were hurt earlier this year. They've recovered and are playing, but they were hurt. So think about that. They're recovering. They're in rehab. They might not be as impressive as they have been all season because they were just hurt. And it takes some time to bounce back from something like that. UCF, on the other hand, was 1-4 to end the season. Truthfully, a little bit lucky they made it here. If they weren't better earlier in the season, they wouldn't have. They got blown out by Arizona in the tournament. So, anyone would get blown out by Arizona on any given day, the second best team in the country. They're considered the 51st best team in the nation. When they're playing good, they shoot phenomenally. So keep that in mind. If they start playing good, consider that it's going to be a good game. If they start the game bad, hope that you picked UCLA because that's probably how it's going to go. They do have wins over ranked BYU, ranked Kansas, and ranked Texas A&M. Those are important. They've seen good teams. They've beaten good teams. That's really important when it comes down to it. They score 81 points per game, but they allow 78.5. That's a really bad ratio, a really bad point per game, allowed point per game ratio. That's bad. But they win. They're averaging more points than they give up, and they're in March Madness. So don't think that this just means that you guys allow 79 points a game. They must be losing left and right. They must be, letting these teams score 160 points on top of their head. No. But it is a struggle of theirs. And the last game of the East is 2-seeded UConn versus 15-seeded Furman. So if you know anything about UConn, like I said earlier, that is a team you never want to face. But their momentum did start to slow down to end the season. They lost to a bad Marquette team. They lost to a mid-Creighton team. And then they got blown out by St. John's in the Big East tournament by 20 points. So St. John's got their get back. They are still considered the 10th best team in the entire country. They were a 1 seed a month ago, but since they lost a couple games, they fell down to a 2. They have very aggressive defense and a very solid offense. They have 5 players scoring 10-plus points per game, which is a very hard thing to do. They score a lot of points. They're very good at it. It's a very strong team. Regardless of their bad losses recently, they are a very, very good team. They're great at passing. One of the best teams in all of college basketball at passing, and it's very tough to cover. Defenses are scrambling, trying to cover UConn's passers. Furman went on a 5-1 run to end the season. They were the number 6 seed in their conference tournament, upset the number 3 seed and the number 1 seed. Knocked them both off to make it to March Madness. They're considered the 186th best team in the country, also in the middle. They have pretty bad turnover issues and a pretty rough defense. Their defense is ass. And keep in mind what I just told you. UConn's passing game is ferocious. Pair that up with a bad defense, this might be a blowout. It's fair to assume it's going to be a blowout even without knowing any of this stuff, but keep that in mind. Alex Wilkins averages 17.7 points per game and 4.7 assists per game, so he's having a really great season, but he's not going to be enough to take them down on their own. They will need a Cinderella-type victory here if they want to win that game. But the one thing that gives Furman some life, they are top 15 out of every team in the entire country in 2-point field goal percentage. They are in the top 15 teams in means of scoring 2-pointers. Top 15. A team like Furman never does that. That is incredibly impressive. If UConn's defense is aggressive enough, they can totally wipe Furman off the board. But if they try too hard or they try to overcompensate or they can't keep up even, then they might start to fall. Furman having a top 15 2-point field goal percentage, they've never done that. And most teams of their magnitude never will. So keep that in mind. When it comes to shooting shots like that, they keep up with the top teams like UConn. But again, a 15 seed. Keep in mind the turnover issues and the rough defense. There are reasons that they most likely will lose this game. Don't think that just because I'm saying one thing, it overrides the rest of the stuff here. But that's it for the East. I'll be back with the West once I finish dinner, which will probably be in about an hour and a half, probably less. So make sure you watch this. Pay attention. Thanks for watching. This took me a really long time. But I'll get on to the East, and then the South, and then the Midwest. And then we'll be done. And you guys can officially make your bracket, and you can come back to this at any point. But that's it for the East.